In a moment that felt frozen in time, a classmate poured glue into her hair as laughter filled the room. Yet, it was this 12-year-old's actions the following day, standing before her entire school, truly brought the assembly hall to a stunned hush. It began subtly, with a mere tug. Jania Cole sat straight at her second-row desk, attention fixed on the math assignment. The classroom held the faint scent of wood pencils and lingering cafeteria smells from the hall. Through the window, faded lockers glinted under the Carolina November sun, almost blinding. As their teacher, Mrs. Langley, turned to write a new problem on the board, Jania felt it a light snagging sensation, like a thread catching. She shifted, unsettled. Then came a sharp prick, a sensation of tightness low on her neck, as if her hair had somehow adhered to her shirt collar. Reaching back cautiously, her fingers finding something rigid, adhesive. "Is something amiss?" Mrs. Langley inquired without facing them. Jania stayed silent. Her fingertips were now enmeshed in what was unmistakably glue, dense, hard in places, still warm in others. A low, mean whisper arose from the row behind her. Someone was snickering. Then, the familiar voice she'd half-dreaded. "Seriously, Jania, what is that you're using?" It was Chase Welling, loud, white, perpetually grinning at his own humor, even when no one else was amused. A few others offered strained chuckles, less out of genuine mirth and more because it felt safer to laugh along than to risk being the next target. Jania's breath hitched, her gaze scanning frantically. She attempted to detach her hair from her hoodie, but it wouldn't yield. It was firmly bonded. Dread surged within her, a feeling of being trapped. Mrs. Langley finally turned, puzzled by the commotion. "Quiet down, everyone. Jania, are you all right?" Jania slowly shook her head. There's something in my hair." By this point, multiple phones were discreetly aimed her way. She saw their faint typing, but she knew they were capturing the moment. She couldn't witness it, but she could certainly feel it. Her agony was swiftly becoming someone else's online fodder. Mrs. Langley approached, bending to examine the back of Jania's head. Her expression shifted as she saw the damage. "Oh, dear. Come with me. We should get you to the nurse's office." As Jania rose, her hair strained at the scalp. She flinched as several locks tore free from the roots. Audible gasps swept through the room. Someone murmured, "She'll be bald." She didn't weep then, not yet. Her gaze remained fixed on the glue-marked desk, on the broad streak of clear adhesive that hadn't fully hardened, and on the floor near Chase's chair, a small, empty travel-sized bottle of Gorilla Glue. No one spoke of it, but Jania noted precisely who averted their eyes most quickly. Miss Bernard, the nurse, was compassionate, but seemed unsure how to handle the situation, her lip caught between her teeth. "I'll need to cut some of it away," she stated softly. "There's just no other option." Jania remained motionless. "All of it?" Miss Bernard paused, a hesitant look on her face. "It's deeply set. We can try to preserve some, but it will likely be painful." When the assistant principal, Mr. Holbrook, entered, he exhaled as if inconvenienced by a scheduling conflict. "Well, it appears someone exercised poor judgment," he mumbled. "Probably didn't foresee this extent of trouble. Kids fool around sometimes." Jania simply stared at him. This wasn't mere fooling around. He met her gaze briefly. "We'll address it seriously, naturally, but it's vital not to overreact. We wouldn't want this to disrupt the class environment." "Disrupt the class?" She almost scoffed. Her scalp was on fire, her hair fused into a painful mass at her neck, and he was concerned about classroom dynamics? "I didn't do anything," she murmured. Mr. Holbrook nodded curtly. "No one is placing blame on you." Yet, she registered the way he evaded her eyes, treating it as a minor hitch in his day, expecting her to feel relief that she hadn't been accused. They offered her a headscarf from the Lost and Found, a pale green one with a small embroidered duckling near the edge. It carried the scent of stale gym attire. She accepted it, but Jania felt far from finished. Back home that afternoon, her scalp ached relentlessly for hours. Jania remained seated on a low stool while her mother, Noelle carefully worked to free what hair she could from the hardened adhesive. A profound silence lay between them, so oppressive it seemed to weigh on the very walls. Noelle's voice was soft, reassuring. "Baby, I need to snip a little more, okay?" Jania offered no reply, only a single, weary blink. With each quiet click of the scissors, another fragment of her self-assurance seemed to drift to the floor. Thick coils of hair she had cultivated for years now gone. Every severed strand felt like the forfeiture of something intangible, not just hair, but composure, self-worth. "Did the school contact you?" she questioned, her voice barely audible. Noelle paused her work. "Mr. Holbrook left a voicemail." Jania turned slightly. "What did he say?" Noelle exhaled slowly through her nose. "He termed it a prank that went too far. Said they'd speak to the student involved, and that they wished to avoid it escalating into a racial issue." Jania blinked, bewildered. "A racial issue? That's his phrasing? But Chase has made comments before about my hair, about needing to wash it more, calling it fake. He said I resembled a mop." Noelle ceased cutting, placing her hands on Jania's shoulders. "I know, sweetheart. Why didn't they act sooner?" "Because educational institutions don't always safeguard those they should," she responded, kneeling before her daughter. "But I will." Jania averted her gaze, her throat tight with emotion. "I don't want to return. You will go back." But everyone witnessed it. They laughed. Some were filming. "I refuse to become a meme." Noelle paused, then gently lifted her daughter's chin, meeting her eyes. "You will not be a meme. You are not a punchline. You are a girl who was harmed unjustly. And you are going to reveal precisely who you are, not with aggression, but with your presence." Jania furrowed her brow. "How?" "We will devise a strategy together." Her mother didn't urge her to retaliate. She instructed her to show them who she was. That evening, the television remained off. No music, no distracting sounds. Just mother and daughter across the table, a spiral notebook between them. "What would help you feel empowered again?" Noelle inquired. Jania nibbled her lower lip. "Not hiding." "You don't have to. I don't want them to see me cry." "You won't." I want to speak." Noelle leaned closer. "Then speak." "But to everyone? Not only to Chase. To everybody. We will ensure that happens." Noelle retrieved her phone, beginning to compose emails, searching contacts. A collective gasp rippled through the room, not loud, but distinct. A girl in the third row discreetly wiped her face. Chase sank lower in his chair. "I didn't stand up here to make anyone feel guilty," Jania stated. "I came to remind you that how you treat fellow human beings has significance. That finding humor in another's pain isn't harmless. That remaining silent supports the perpetrators." She paused. "I am not defeated, and I will not retreat. Not from you. Not from anyone." A single teacher near the side offered a solitary clap, then others gradually joined in. A few students rose to their feet. One girl, whom Jania believed was named Tara, approached and embraced her without hesitation. Others followed suit. By the time she finished speaking, the microphone was silent, and Jania found herself enveloped by a circle of people, some total strangers, extending their hands, murmuring apologies, expressions of pride, or simply that they hadn't known how to articulate their feelings until this moment. Miss Diaz approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Would you like to take a seat now?" Jania nodded, just slightly this time. She descended from the stage deliberately, not quickly as if escaping, but with the quiet assurance of someone who had articulated necessary truths and felt no urgency to leave. She didn't glance back at Chase as she passed. She didn't need to. His eyes remained fixed on the floor throughout. However, the subsequent events were unexpected. By the time Jania returned to her classroom, her phone vibrated incessantly with notifications, not from unfamiliar numbers, but from fellow students, classmates she hadn't interacted with all year. Messages like, "I didn't know what to say then. I'm sorry, and that was incredibly brave. Seriously, and I teared up a little. Don't tell anyone." She didn't reply immediately. She needed space to absorb what had just occurred. For the first time in days, her shoulders felt relaxed, her hands unclenched. She simply sat and allowed herself to process the moment. Simultaneously, the school office descended into pandemonium. Parents had begun phoning even before the assembly concluded. Someone had live-streamed the event from the gymnasium, and snippets were already spreading online. By late afternoon, the local news had picked up the story. And Chase? He was removed from class. Not by security, not by law enforcement, but by Mr. Holbrook, who quietly requested he accompany him to the office. Jania didn't see him again that day. She didn't feel the need to. As the final bell rang, dismissing students for the day, Miss Langley approached Jania, kneeling beside her desk. "Are you all right?" Jania nodded. "Yes." The teacher appeared poised to say more, but hesitated, then simply offered, "I'm very proud of you." Jania managed a small, weary smile. "Thanks." Stepping outside, Noelle was waiting at the curb. Jania climbed into the car, closed the door, and for a moment, silence hung between them, save for the soft click of the seatbelt. "You did it," Noelle finally stated. "I don't know exactly what I did," Jania replied, "but yeah, I did it." Her mother chuckled softly. "You initiated a change." The following day, the atmosphere felt altered. Not perfect, but undeniably different. For one, Chase Welling received a 10-day suspension, not his first behavioral infraction, but this one was impossible to overlook, particularly after being witnessed by thousands online via phones, tablets, and social media feeds. The principal convened an emergency staff meeting that very afternoon. Educators were urged to demonstrate increased vigilance in classrooms, and a message was dispatched to all parents emphasizing the cultivation of a secure and inclusive learning environment. But for Jania, the most significant impact wasn't the suspension or the official statements. It was the altered perception in people's eyes, not pity, but a burgeoning respect. In the hallway, a 7th grade girl she barely knew smiled and commented, "Hey, your hair, it looks strong." Not pretty, not nice, but strong. Jania clung to that word throughout the day. In the cafeteria line, a group of boys who had previously made fun of her in hushed tones stood silently as she passed. They said little, but notably, they didn't laugh. And sometimes, that quiet absence of cruelty functions as its own form of apology. During science period, Miss Cardenas led a classroom discussion on personal ethics and bravery, a topic Jania noticed wasn't typically covered in their textbook. Later that same week, she was escorted to the media center, where a woman in a black jacket introduced herself as a reporter from a local news channel. Jania glanced towards her mother, who had taken leave from work to be present, and offered a slight nod. The interview was brief, filmed under soft lighting with a single camera. The journalist inquired about her feelings, what she hoped others would understand, and what guidance she might offer someone experiencing a similar ordeal. Jania responded with quiet composure, speaking without referring to notes. "I hope people will stop waiting until someone is harmed before they care," she stated. "I want schools to cease downplaying issues until they gain widespread attention online. I want young girls like me to no longer feel compelled to remain quiet." When the segment aired, it lasted only 2 minutes, but its impact was considerable. It prompted a middle school student in another state to email her, inspired a school board member to request a meeting, and ultimately demonstrated that her voice truly mattered. Yet, Jania hadn't sought notoriety. Her desire was simply for justice to prevail, and for the right reasons. As the week concluded, attention grew, extending beyond the school walls to encompass the entire district. A neighboring high school invited Jania to speak during their morning announcements. A community center in Asheville contacted her mother, inquiring if she would participate in a youth discussion panel. Someone even noted that a city councilwoman had shared the video clip of her speech online, characterizing it as a potent reminder of the strength inherent in children's voices. At home, however, Jania remained simply Jania. She continued to take out the garbage, feed the cat, and assist her mother with washing dishes. Life didn't suddenly halt because people had finally acknowledged her. She still awoke with a tender spot at the back of her head. She still occasionally saw her reflection and experienced that peculiar pang of sorrow, Not solely for her hair, but for something less tangible, something stolen, whose nature she was still trying to articulate. One evening, she sat on the edge of her bed, knees drawn to her chest, while Noelle folded laundry at the foot of the mattress. The local news played softly in the background, re-airing her story for the third consecutive night. She knew someone within the school district, another who was acquainted with the school board representative. She wasn't a woman of wealth, working the early hours at a downtown credit union, but she possessed determination, and sometimes that resolve resonated louder than finances. While her mother worked the phone, Jania began writing. A single sentence initially, then more. What emotions she felt, the events that transpired, what she hoped others would comprehend. She didn't dwell on the glue itself. Rather, she wrote about the sensation of navigating hallways where no one intervened on her behalf, the burden of feigning normalcy for others' comfort, the significance of her hair as part of her identity, and how its loss, in such a manner, transcended a mere prank to become something more profound. She wrote for an hour, then two. Her mother silently watched over her shoulder. At one point, Noelle tenderly wiped a tear from Jania's cheek with her sleeve. "Are you certain you wish to voice this publicly?" Jania nodded. "We're going to require a microphone," Noelle stated softly. Jania slept little, yet the following morning, she entered the school prepared. The following morning, Jania waited outside the school entrance, a gray hoodie covering her head. The same scarf was tied underneath, but now its purpose wasn't concealment. It was simply a temporary measure. She felt the cool air touch her exposed scalp where her curls had been, the skin feeling raw, not just from the glue, but from the weight of everything it represented. Noelle's rust-red Nissan Altima idled just a few feet away, her mother watching. Before Jania stepped inside, her mom rolled down the window. "Got your notes?" Jania patted her backpack. "Right here." "Are you absolutely ready for this today?" Jania gave a slow nod. "I have to." Noelle's smile was strained, yet proud. "All right then. Show them." Jania offered a small wave and walked towards the doors. Her heart pounded rapidly, not with fear, but with a forceful, living beat. Inside, the school building appeared unchanged, the same muted floor tiles, the same persistent hum of fluorescent lights, students brushing past as if the previous day had been ordinary. Yet today felt weighted. She sensed countless eyes upon her, even from those who deliberately avoided looking. Mr. Holbrook noticed her from down the corridor, approaching swiftly, clipboard in hand. "Miss Cole, may I have a word?" Jania paused. "I've spoken with your mother," he stated, lowering his voice. "She mentioned you requested to address the student assembly later today. I just need to verify, are you entirely certain you wish to proceed with that?" Jania blinked. "Yes, sir." Holbrook hesitated. It could provoke a response. "Just be advised." She didn't falter. "I am aware." He nodded, more to himself. "Very well. I'll inform Miss Diaz to allocate you a few minutes near the conclusion." Jania made her way to first period, but the classes that followed felt indistinct. She retained little memory of the whiteboards or the teacher's questions. Each moment was merely a countdown to the assembly. When the bell signaled the end of fifth period, students started migrating towards the gymnasium. Rows of folding chairs covered the gleaming wooden floor. The stage at the front was low, accessible by a single step, featuring a well-used microphone on a silver stand. The air in the gym was thick with noise, students chatting, tapping on phones, carelessly discarding wrappers. Chase Welling occupied a seat near the center, flanked by his usual companions. He wore a baseball hoodie, his feet propped on the chair ahead of him. He hadn't met her gaze a single time since the incident. Miss Diaz, the school counselor, approached the microphone and tapped it twice. "All right, everyone, please settle down. We'll begin shortly." She addressed the assembly for several minutes, mentioning upcoming field trips, club activities, and a reminder about tidiness after lunch. But Jania scarcely registered her words. She sat in the foremost row, clutching her folded paper, her legs subtly trembling. "You're on in a couple of minutes," Miss Diaz murmured to her. Jania rose. Students remained somewhat distracted as Miss Diaz spoke again. Before we conclude, one of our students has requested to share a few words. Please direct your attention to Jania Cole. A few students glanced up. Many did not. But then she ascended the single step onto the platform, her hoodie still up, hands trembling slightly. A hush gradually enveloped the gymnasium as she approached the microphone. She unfolded her paper, glanced at the words, then lifted her eyes to the assembled students. She stood in silence for a full 5 seconds before beginning. My name is Jania Cole. I am 12 years old, and I want to speak about what occurred to me this week. Eyes began to rise. Phones began to record. But I don't just want to talk about what was done to me. I want to discuss why it happened, and what it signifies when people choose laughter over assistance. Then she spoke. The gymnasium fell into an almost absolute quiet. You could discern the faint vibration of a phone in a backpack, the scrape of a shoe, a distant cough. But no one was conversing. Even those usually prone to whispering during announcements were simply watching. Jania's voice remained steady throughout. I was seated at my desk when a classmate poured glue into my hair, she recounted, looking directly ahead, not at her notes. I didn't anticipate it. I felt it when I attempted to move, and my hair was bonded to my shirt. A few heads swiveled towards Chase. He shifted uncomfortably, his face flushing pink, but remained silent. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there, trying to maintain my composure while it hardened on my scalp. She allowed the weight of that statement to settle. I went to the nurse. I was informed my hair would need to be cut, not trimmed, but removed. They characterized it as just a prank, claiming no one intended such severe consequences. She scanned the crowd. But what if it hadn't been glue? What if it had been something far worse? Would it still be dismissed as a prank? Or would it finally be taken seriously? Students lowered their gazes to their feet. Others stared straight ahead. There were individuals in that space who had laughed, who had said nothing, who had recorded her pain. You didn't have to be the one holding the glue to be part of it. Someone in the front rows shifted uneasily in their seat. Jania pressed on. You might consider hair insignificant, simply just hair. But it isn't. Not to me. I didn't wear extensions. I didn't straighten it. This was my hair. Natural. Authentic. It took years to cultivate. Her fingers rose to the rim of her hood. And now it's gone. She slowly pushed the hood back, revealing her head. No scarf. No longer concealed. Her head was largely shaved, but not smoothly. Uneven sections remained in irregular clusters, areas where the glue had left marks or proven impossible to entirely remove. I didn't expect them to care this much, Jania remarked. Noelle didn't raise her gaze. They care because you refuse to be silent. But I didn't articulate anything groundbreaking. People endure similar things constantly. Exactly, Noelle affirmed. You articulated what countless others feel but are too fearful to express aloud. Jania stared at her duvet cover. I didn't do it for recognition. I understand, her mother said gently. And the people who matter understand that too. She paused. What if they forget by next week? They might, Noelle replied, stacking a shirt. But those who genuinely needed to hear you, those who needed someone to speak up, they won't forget. At school, Chase returned following his suspension. He kept his head lowered, devoid of jokes, loud whispers, or arrogant smiles. He didn't address Jania, and she didn't seek an apology. One afternoon, she encountered him in the hallway walking alongside the principal, who once again carried his clipboard. Chase still avoided eye contact, but his pace was subdued, as if he recognized he was no longer beyond consequence. Later that week, Miss Langley distributed an updated classroom policy sheet, including a specific section addressing harassment and nonverbal intimidation. Every student was required to initial it. A few rolled their eyes silently. Others simply signed. The message had been delivered. Even some faculty members began to adjust their approach. The social studies teacher initiated discussions about individual responsibility and the importance of mutual protection. The school librarian curated a new display featuring books by authors Jania had never encountered within the school before. A change was underway. It wasn't a flawless transformation, but it was a beginning. One afternoon, as Jania gathered her belongings, Tara, the girl who had embraced her at the assembly, approached. "I admired what you said," she murmured. "I mean, not what happened, but your courage in speaking up there." Jania smiled. "Thanks." Tara hesitated. I'm trying to let my hair grow out natural again." Jania tilted her head slightly. "Yeah. My mom keeps suggesting I straighten it for picture day, but I don't want it anymore." Jania nodded slowly. "You shouldn't feel obligated to alter yourself." Tara smiled back. "I know. And now, I think I actually believe it." They didn't exchange further words. They didn't need to. Ultimately, Jania didn't require a platform to be significant. She didn't need cameras or applause. What she needed, and what she received, was the opportunity to be truly seen, to articulate her feelings, and to know that somewhere, even just one person, had truly listened. For the moment, that was enough. But one final statement remained unmade. Weeks elapsed. The murmuring in the hallway subsided, the phone ceased recording, and attention inevitably shifted towards other school incidents, a misplaced backpack, an altercation near the gymnasium, the approaching winter dance. Life at Henderson Middle School resumed its rhythm. But Jania didn't forget. Not when she stood before the mirror, gently brushing the fine new growth at her hairline, attempting to style something soft around the recovering areas. Not when she observed another girl recoil as a cluster of boys laughed excessively in the cafeteria. Not when she entered a classroom and noted teachers observing slightly more attentively, posing questions with a touch more empathy. She saw these subtle shifts quietly, carefully. There were still occasions when she felt small, but no longer entirely overlooked. One Tuesday after lunch, Miss Diaz motioned her over and presented her with a substantial envelope. "Some of these are letters for you," she explained, "from other students and some from parents." Jania opened it upon reaching home. Inside were more than 30 letters. One, from a 6th grade girl named Ruby, who shared that she wore a wig due to a skin condition and that witnessing Jania's speech had finally given her the bravery to stop concealing herself beneath her hoodie. Another from a boy who confessed he had laughed the day of the glue incident, but it had troubled him continuously. Unable to apologize verbally, he had written it down. There was a message from an older woman, the grandmother of another student, who simply stated, "Your story moved me to tears. I hope my grandchildren will grow to possess your courage." Jania sat on her bed and read each letter meticulously. Then, she folded them with care, placed them in a shoebox, and slid it beneath her bed, not to forget, but as a safeguard for the memory that even when people appear oblivious, they are often paying attention. At school, she never received a direct apology from Chase, but she discovered she no longer required one. What he had attempted to take from her was no longer solely his to impact. It had already transformed into something more resilient within her. Her hair was gradually regenerating, still uneven but steadily progressing, and for the first time, her aspiration wasn't for it to be long again, but simply for it to feel authentically hers, free from expectations or embarrassment. During the final week before the winter holiday, the principal inquired if she would consent to recording a message for an anti-bullying initiative across the school. She agreed, provided she could compose the script herself. She stood before a small camera crew, with Miss Diaz observing from behind the lens. She wore no head covering, just a simple black t-shirt and a delicate gold necklace her grandmother had given her for her 12th birthday. Looking directly into the camera, she spoke. "My name is Jania Cole. I once believed that silence offered protection, that remaining unseen meant I couldn't be harmed. But the reality is, silence offers no shield. It merely grants greater volume to those who wish to do wrong." She paused, then offered a soft smile. "You don't need to yell to possess strength. You just need to stand." That video didn't achieve viral status. It didn't need to. Its purpose was internal, shown during homeroom periods, shared with incoming students, incorporated into staff development. But for every young person seated in the back, questioning if their perspective held value, it affirmed that it did. And for those inclined towards petty cruelties, quiet insults, thoughtless actions, it served as a reminder that they were observed, they were heard, and someone would articulate the truth. Because one girl had. Not aspiring to be a figure of heroism, not for acclaim, but because sometimes, when circumstances attempt to diminish you, the only viable response is to flourish nonetheless. And so she did. If this narrative resonated with you, if you saw yourself within it or recognized someone you know, please share it. Help someone else understand that experiencing pain doesn't equate to weakness, and choosing to stand up doesn't mean being overly aggressive. It means being heard.